Hello? I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to pass this along. Hey, everybody. Thanks for staying with us. I'm going to pass this computer to Andrea.
Wait, is that actually logged in?
Yeah.
Hi!
There you go.
Wait. So loud.
Does that work for you?
Well, I have earbuds and headphones on.
So that's broadcasting, so just use that computer.
Which one is?
This one.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, I now hear you. Okay.
So ignore this. Got it?
Yes. No, you know what? It's working. It's working fine now.
No, it's that one.
No, because maybe you have to have at least 2 people in it for it to broadcast audio.
That's not broadcasting anymore.
Oh, it's not?
So just use this one. Just do what you were doing.
No, because this one has the soup. No, it doesn't. Okay. What are we hearing?
You're hearing these headphones. So take this. There you go.
Yeah, do it like this.
And now go here. Hit Q&A. And now you can take questions. And hit close.
Now I can't hear anything.
You're definitely broadcasting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Hi, everyone. Sorry, that was such a trying to think of a non bad word. A cluster farf. Welcome to the DecodeDC Hangout. I expected this to be a little bit smoother in the beginning, but you know what? This is the first time we have ever done it. Let me just test the microphone here. Could you guys let me know when you actually hear me start for real? Can you hear me? Okay. Over here, by the way, is Rachel Quester, the producer of the show. And back there, you can see Miranda Green, who is working on a video for DecodeDC. This is our lovely edit bag here. And through the looking glass, which is where he should be, is Marc Georges, who is sitting there in the soundproofed room monitoring this chat as it goes on. But you know what? There's a whole 40-second delay. So he won't see that for another about 40 seconds. So it'll be fun to see when he actually figures out that I was doing that in the first place. It's really great to have you guys here. We were overwhelmed by the response that we got to our subscription asking for the screenshots. Just to give you an idea of why we did that, our numbers go way up when people are actually subscribed because the podcast immediately downloads to your phones. And so the moment we put up a new show, you, depending on how you have the settings on your phone or Stitcher or whatever you're using, it will get downloaded automatically. So we can often see the number of downloads tick up. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, the business model of DecodeDC now is very different than it was in the beginning, obviously. And so advertising is kind of the name of the game. So the more you can even just go to the websites that are mentioned, you know, you don't have to want an intranet. You'll actually like to go to igloo.com/decode, or no, it's igloosoftware.com/decode, I think. And you can, they register when somebody has used that URL. So you can just go to that if you want to, you know, keep supporting the show. Okay, there's a question that says, I am experiencing repeated audio. Is it just me? I don't know what that means. Does the audio sound okay? There's a question that says, I'm experiencing repeated audio.
You could tell them to X out and then come back in, maybe. So there's 2 windows open.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. You might have two windows open at the same time, or because the lag really depends on your internet connection, or you can close out the window and rejoin. That'll work too. Let me get down to some brass tacks here. So I'm Andrea Seabrook. I am the host of DecodeDC. And thank you all for being here. I don't know how many of you actually know my story, but I covered Congress in Washington for NPR for about a decade. And I also hosted All Things Considered and Weekend Edition Sunday and Talk to the Nation and lots of different shows at NPR. And by about 2012, I couldn't stand the way we were covering Congress and Washington anymore. So I don't know how many of you remember, but the summer of 2011 was completely insane because the sort of new Tea Party majority in the House of Representatives had come had been elected in the fall of 2010 and then come in January of 2011. And remember, there was this, incredible time of voting for absolutely nothing that the president wanted, including the basic bills to fund the federal government. So these are these things that you hear about called continuing resolutions. Really, the Congress should pass what are called appropriations bills, which fund the government for an entire year. And if anyone's interested, I can talk all about the budget process and put you all straight to sleep. So by the summer, it was like May, I think, May, June of 2011, we had the first government shutdown threat of the Republican House of Representatives. And there were these crazy bills that would fund the government for like 2 days while they continued to fight with each other. And then there was this stretch of probably 3 weeks that were agonizing for reporters in the Capitol, because what was happening was absolutely nothing. And every day that nothing happened, we were a day closer to shutting down the government. And it was this huge deal. We hadn't gone through the shutdown threats yet. So it was very different than what the story had been before. Now we're all kind of used to the shutdown threat and we're like, yeah, okay, get your act together, Congress. But then it was this huge deal. And so imagine being a reporter going into this building where there are all these, members of Congress wandering around, not talking to you, most of them rank and file members who had no idea what was going on anyway. And then every day that passed that nothing happened was a big news day. So for like 3 weeks, or it could have been 6, I don't remember, for a long time, we had to create news every day. We had to explain the fact that nothing was happening, and so we were a step closer to complete shutdown. So, so that summer of 2011 really ground me down. It was, and actually Carl Hulse of the New York Times, a bunch of friends of mine who were all covering the Capitol in the same press pool, we just felt like we had been put in a mortar and pestle and made into pulp. So it was about that time that I started to formulate a plan to leave. And at first I was just going to leave NPR and do something else for a while. My degree is actually in biology. I have always wanted to cover science, and I'm a science geek in general. But I decided that in good conscience, I needed to make good on my promise as a public radio reporter and as a journalist in general, my promise of trying to cover Washington and Congress in a way that actually was a service to people. I decided after a lot of deliberation that I couldn't get NPR to move fast enough to change the way we were covering Washington. A huge part of this is that I felt like we, the journalists in the Capitol, were being duped all the time. We would go to these press conferences with, you know, Speaker Pelosi or later Speaker Boehner or anyone else in the Capitol and be fed these talking points, which we would record and then, you know, play on the radio in my case, or write up in a newspaper, or cover as journalists. And the truth is that that is not the story. You know, when the majority in the House or the Senate brings a bill to the floor and debates it, that is almost completely theater. The leadership doesn't bring a bill to the floor until they know it can pass. They have outlined the talking points for and sometimes even against the bill. People line up to quote unquote debate the bill that's on the floor with their own talking points, often written by staffers, and there is no real debate. Hi, Miranda. You know, if I could take you into the House chamber or the Senate chamber, I would love to, because you would see what you can't see on C-SPAN. If C-SPAN were to like take its little, you know, square and zoom out, you would see a giant empty room, echoing with the words of the person at the podium debating what's going on in Washington. That's all theater. It's completely pre-planned, predestined. That's why if you ever hear a news story about something failing in Congress, it's sort of breathlessly covered that way, because nothing ever fails. It's completely predestined. And so as a journalist, walking into the Capitol and covering what's on the floor, the debate, or the press conferences, or the fights between the he said, she said, is it's just a complete ruse. We're lied to all day long. And therefore, because we're journalists and we have to cover what's going on in Washington, I was turning around and repeating those lies to you, which in essence is akin to lying to you myself, especially after I figured out that the real story is what's not happening. It's what's not happening in Congress, or it's the story that is happening behind closed doors. It's what the congressmen aren't doing, which is, by the way, legislating. They are not really legislating. In fact, I would, and I know this is being recorded, I have no compunction about saying this, your Congress, your representatives in Washington are fundraisers who occasionally vote for a bill. They are not lawmakers who occasionally raise funds. The truth is that members of Congress, you know, wake up, put on their clothes, and go to a breakfast fundraiser. You know, bagels and coffee and checks from lobbyists that are given to the event planner. And then they may go to their office for a couple hours and have, and then leave and have a mid-morning fundraiser with, you know, mimosas and Bloody Marys and more checks going to the planner or the organizer of the event. And then they'll go have a lunch with people, with lobbyists, or they'll go over to their party headquarters off the Hill and spend an hour or two calling people back in the district or rich people around the country and asking for money. And then they might have a couple of votes on the floor, which they, run onto the floor, insert their like little ID card, vote, and run back out because they have a afternoon fundraiser to get to before they go to one of the bars in town with a private room in the back and have a drinks and hors d'oeuvres fundraiser. And then, there's dinner, which is usually, a couple $1,000s a plate fundraiser. So actually many lawmakers have told me that the goal these days is from being elected in one election to running up to the next election 2 years later, members of Congress generally need to raise an average of $10,000 a day. $10,000 a day, every day. And in order to have weekends or spend any time with their family or, God forbid, legislate, they have to, they usually try and do, 100,000 a week, Monday through Friday, and then take the weekends off or go to more fundraisers. So I think I've beaten this on the head long enough. The point is, that's the story. And there is a real ecosystem that has evolved in Washington around money, lobbyists, campaigning, and that, I think, is the story. Most everything spins out from there. Let's see. I'm sure there are lots of other great questions. Actually, I haven't taken any questions except, oh my God, we can't hear you yet. So I am going to look over here on the side and see what some of these questions are. Let's see. Okay, so Andrea Crane asks, does the partnership with Scripps still give you the freedom you wanted when you quit NPR? Good question. The partnership with Scripps has been fantastic. I will tell you that the person who runs the Scripps Washington Bureau is Ellen Weiss. She was the vice president of news at NPR for many years, and before that, the head. It's my ringtone. Before that, she was the head of the national desk at NPR, which means all of the reporting from all over the country. And before that, she was the executive producer of All Things Considered for many years, and before that, an actual producer on the program. So she is a public radio person, and originally, she is not any longer. And we love NPR. It's the gold standard. I don't mean to knock it. I adore the place. Many friends still there. I built my entire career's worth of work there, including my commitment to quality and aesthetic and, accuracy of journalism. But I think they're still not covering the real story in Washington often. I mean, they have some awesome, great reporters, and the new people covering the Congress are great. Tamara Keith is covering the White House now. She's brilliant. So is Scott Horsley and Ari Shapiro, all of them covering Washington. But the mechanics of NPR are such that reporters spend a lot of time doing 3.5 and 4 minute stories about what happened today, and not a whole lot of depth in Washington. They can't just say, well, we're being lied to the way I can now. So it is wonderful to be here. There are actually several other people here from NPR. We keep stealing production assistants from them. Rachel, once again, Rachel Quester, my producer here, my main producer on DecodeDC, was at NPR before. And and we have close ties with them. One thing that I really miss a lot about NPR is working with the stations. Hi, Mark. There's Mark again. Mark George, our digital producer. We miss working with, I miss working with the stations, because NPR stations are fabulous places full of brilliant people who often don't get the credit that they deserve for their local programming, for the stuff that they host and sort of drop in from the national NPR. And we are trying to figure out ways to get DecodeDC on your local NPR stations, or at least, you know, bits of DecodeDC, maybe cut a segment here or there. Or I'm always talking to NPR stations. I'm always thrilled to be a guest, and I love keeping in touch with that audience. If you would like more DecodeDC on your local NPR station, please feel free to send them an email, call them up, say, you know, one of the podcasts I listen to is DecodeDC. It's Andrea Seabrook. She should be on NPR. She was, and you should reach out to her. You know, go ahead and say that. And you know, implicit in that is, again, I truly believe that NPR would have really benefited from this project, and I tried to get them to do it. You know, a sort of kind of Planet Money for Washington without the money part, but you know, the deeper inside look. And they said yes. And then they said yes 2 months later, and they kept saying yes and yes and yes. Andrea, can you please just cover, you know, the rest of this Congress? Can you please just, you know, finish out this campaign? Can you please, you know, just a little longer? And I finally, like, it wasn't like I stormed off angry at NPR. I stormed off angry at Washington, and couldn't in good conscience continue to cover it that way. Conscience. There. Another question. Let's see. Thank you, Andrea. Andrea, however you pronounce your name. People are always pronouncing mine 8 different ways. Okay. Here's one from Tim. What do you think of the May Day US PAC, ironically created by Lawrence Lessig to lessen the influence of big money donors on Congress? Does something like this really have a chance of success? I think it's brilliant. It's the next best thing to Stephen Colbert's PAC. And actually, you know, Colbert's PAC served to teach us all the completely surreal world of PACs and money in politics in general. Lawrence Lessig's PAC, and I know him. I've interviewed him quite a few times. His PAC is brilliant. It's like, you know, I think the PAC to end all PACs. I think that's what he calls it. And you know, it's an acknowledgement that that you can't change the system that you're in, that we have grown here, and I mean we, without using the tools that are available to us within that system. It's the only way to do it. Unless, you know, here's the thing. The way to get money out of politics, if that's your goal, is to either pass a constitutional amendment that would basically enforce the rules that existed before the Supreme Court struck them down in Citizens United, and in the cases against what's known as BICRA, the McCain-Feingold Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act. You either have to pass a constitutional amendment now that the Supreme Court has shut it down, or you have to come up with some other mechanism to rein in the money in politics. You would have to either set up a public funding system, publicly financing elections in the United States, or, you know, and the truth is none of those things are possible while members of Congress are raising $10,000 a day. I mean, one of the most surprising things that I have found out in recent times is that members of Congress hate it. They really hate raising money all the time. That's not why most of them got into politics in the first place. It's not what they want to be doing. I mean, it's horrible to just spend all your time begging for money. I mean, I don't want to be like, oh, poor members of Congress, because they have plenty of power and privilege. But, you know, some of them would love to vote for a constitutional amendment or some other, you know, like a public financing system or some other way to rein in the money. Even on, you know, on both sides of the aisle. I'm not talking about one party over the other. But you can't, they can't, as a member of Congress, ask people to give them money and then say, you're dirty for giving me money. It's like a cognitive dissonance. At the same time, they're in kind of a circular firing squad. The first person to put down their weapon, you know, he may say, I'm going to put down my weapon and you guys can all put down your weapons too, but he may just get shot by everyone else. And that's more or less what's happened. I mean, most of the candidates who have opted into the weird system of public financing that we have for candidates have not been elected. That's why around every time we have an open presidential election, there's all these stories about whether will Hillary Clinton take public money, will Barack Obama take the public money, because if you take public money, it shuts off your ability to raise, you know, beyond a certain amount, and it's very complicated. But no one wants to hamstring themselves. They're all in this position of, okay, I'll just get elected this way, and then I'll change it. Just one more election, and then I'll change the system. So you really need somebody like a Lawrence Lessig to come in and say, I'm not getting elected. I'm not using this money for that. I'm raising as much money as I possibly can to free us from money. The last part of your question, does something like this really have a chance of success? I think it does have a chance of success. I think it is a lot harder than I think Lessig sometimes makes it look, although he acknowledges it's a tough job. We have created an ecosystem in Washington that is going to be awfully hard to change. Right now, the way that people get access to a member of Congress is by giving donations to that member of Congress's campaign. You can't stop lobbying. Lobbying is in the Constitution. You have the right to address your, or what is it, redress your grievances. There's the actual, I have a Constitution in my purse. Wait, hold on. What is that sound?
It's the computer.
Oh, it's the fan. Okay. Right. I don't know why I'm wearing these headphones, because actually I can't hear anything. I guess it's for the mic. But I carry a Constitution in my purse at all times because, and I know you're going to all think I'm a big dork, but the truth is that when you work in the Capitol building, stuff comes up all the time, and it's not just like, which amendment, you know, gave me the right to vote since I'm a chick, or when did they, you know, repeal prohibition, because everybody wants to know that. But it's more like when a police officer is trying to clear you out of a hallway because the Speaker of the House is going to come through that hallway. I oftentimes need to like show them the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. First Amendment right there. I can whip this puppy out and say to the police officer, sir or ma'am, you know, your job is not to protect Speaker Boehner from me. Your job is to protect Speaker Boehner from the public or anyone who would do him harm. But he is the Speaker of the House. The Capitol is a public building. It is a building that I am allowed to work in because I'm a member of the press. And I hate to tell you this, but Congress and by extension the Capitol Police are not allowed to abridge my freedom to cover this place. These are elected representatives of the of the districts in the United States. So, my God, that was a long-winded answer. Anyone want me to read more of the Constitution? Because I always like reading the Constitution. And this one is fabulous because it also has a copy of the Declaration of Independence in it, see? And the Declaration of Independence. I may, you know, if you want one of these, I would love to send you one. If you would like to have a Constitution to keep in your purse or backpack, I personally will get one and send it to you. Send me your name and address to Andrea@DecodeDC.com, and I will buy you a Constitution. My people over here are laughing at me because I'm a freak. You know, like, what are you doing, Andrea? You're creating more work for yourself. But like, I'm not even talking about having them do it or anything. I'm gonna do myself because I want everybody to have a copy of the Constitution. Also, it's online, but you know. Okay, thanks for your question, Tim. Let's see, the next question, and I love that this allows you guys to sort of thumbs up questions because it can give me a chance to see how many, you know, answer the ones that people like the most. When did Congress become a fundraising group instead of legislative? How did it happen, or has it largely always been this way? I'm glad you asked that, especially the second part, because anyone who says that Congress is worse than it's ever been forgets that during the Civil War, you know, one member of Congress walked over to the Senate and like beat a guy up with his cane. Congress has never been a nice, happy place. Congress has always been contentious, and it should be that way. When did it become a fundraising group instead of legislative? It's been a slow, kind of organic process over the last 20 years, really. There have been several attempts to stop it. What happened is that members of Congress, well, first of all, they started needing to air campaign ads on television. And the cost of advertising on television has gone up and up. And so there's that. Then there's sort of an arms race among or between the political parties about who can raise more money. And then raising money became kind of a symbol of how well you're doing before the primaries. And so members of Congress and presidential candidates like to raise as much money as soon as possible to keep other people from getting into the race. And so right now, especially, everyone's worried, everyone in Congress is worrying about being primaried, meaning being challenged from the left in a primary if they're a Democrat, or from the right in a primary if they're a Republican, especially in the Republican side. And in order to keep Tea Party candidates or far progressive candidates from getting into the race, members of Congress will try and raise, you know, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 before people can even register to run. Because that way someone will say, like, I'd really like to run for Congress, but I'm just a normal person and I don't have, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to raise anything like that, and I'm just going to be obliterated, which is often true. Also, Something else that's happened in this ecosystem is the state legislatures have redrawn congressional districts, federal congressional districts, in a way that has made them very safe. This is the redistricting debate. It's they do this thing. So the Congress, no, the Constitution again, says that there will be a census every, once in a while, every 10 years, and that the number of members of Congress and the lines of their districts will be redrawn to make sure that the Congress is still representative of the people. But what happens is state legislatures come together, and they used to actually draw the congressional districts with a pencil on a map. And they got some fancy math to try and figure out how to, whoever was in charge of that state legislature, whoever had the majority, would figure out a way to get the most number of districts for their party. But then computers came along, and they're really, really good at doing complicated math. And so they got better and better and better at drawing these districts. And they use an algorithm that is called cracking and stacking, which means that they get the population of the state and the voting records, the voting registration records, and say the Republicans are in charge of, the Texas legislature, which they are. They will get those numbers, and they will figure out a way to draw, well, they'll know from the numbers how many congressional districts they get to have in general, right? I think it's something like 26 or in Texas, something like that. And then they'll figure out a way to make as many of those districts packed with Democrats as possible. That's called stacking. So you make, of the 26, say you make 10 districts that have as many Democrats as possible. They're like plus 10 D districts in the sort of political science talk, meaning like it's 90% Democratic and there's like one Republican in the neighborhood that everybody knows because they have the one like George Bush yard sign. Then they take the rest of the congressional districts, so you have 10 Democrats, and they make as many districts as they can out of those that are about 60% Republican. So it's a way of maximizing the number of districts their party will get. That's the cracking part. That's why the districts look so funny. If you've ever seen those lines that go all over the place, it's because the party in control of the state legislature is trying to give as many districts to their own party as possible. And they want them to be reliably, in this example, they want them to be reliably Republican districts. That's why they put 60%, they make them 60% Republican. But, the effect is, if you were going to take 26 districts and evenly apportion them by party, you would have 13 and 13. But that's not what happens. And then the Democrats take over the state legislature, and I guarantee you at some point a different party will have the Texas state legislature. They will reverse all that and draw new lines that maximize the number of seats that they have. So this sounds like it's not about fundraising, but it is, because once your district is reliably yours, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, sorry, I just got a weird sound in my ear. Once it's reliably your party's, then you almost never get challenged because you're the candidate. Like, what kind of primary would it be if your district is 60% Republican or 90% Democrat? The only people, like, the election is actually decided in the primary because it's going to go to your party, right? So the only challenge you're ever going to get is from someone in your party, which means during the primary. And so few people vote in primary elections. And actually, in a lot of places, you can't vote in a primary election unless you're registered for that party. I have 5 minutes left, and boy, can I talk. It's like totally occupational hazard. Yeah, I will keep answering questions. Is it possible to like chat answer them on this?
No.
No, can we, is it
Do
possible?
another one in like a week or month or something?
Yeah, we're going to totally do this again. Can we extend the time at all?
I'll see if I can do it on this end.
I know, Mark's like,
You're
they have a name for me here. They've like had this hilarious joke that my autobiography one day is going to be called "Sorry I'm Late. I Brought Snacks," because I'm really bad at time management, and I'm really bad at judging how much time has passed, which is funny because I'll say like, "Oh, the podcast will be ready in 2 hours," and then I'll sit down and work on it with Rachel, and like 5 hours later, my editor will come in and be like, hello. So anyway, so that, so redistricting and, the way that the districts are set up, the fact that your seat is safe, the way lobbyists gain access to you as a member of Congress, all of these things have created that ecosystem that is really exceptional. There has always been money in politics. An old member of Congress once told me that an old member of Congress told him when he was a young member of Congress that when lawmakers first came to Congress, in the 18 and early 1900s, they would be issued 2 desks, 2 chairs, and a safe. And the desk, one desk and chair was for your secretary, and one desk and chair was for the member of Congress, and the safe was for the cash that lobbyists would bring you. So it's, it's always been this way to some extent, but it really is exceptionally bad now. When you get to the point where the United States Congress is so screwed up and polarized that it can't respond to an actual crisis, for example, the financial crisis, then you're pretty much in an exceptional situation. Let's see, Mark, did you say that?
I'm not able to extend it, so it'll end at 1.
Okay, so in 5 minutes, at least according to, I think that's network time, right?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. This window is going to go freeze, and I will no longer be talking at you. I can't believe all of you are still there. Like, dozens of people are watching this, and I'm really flattered by it. This is, dreamy for me to actually be able to talk to real people about what's going on in Congress. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts, obviously, and I talk about a lot of stories, but there are some things that are better said conversationally, like this, for example, that as a journalist in the Congress, in the Capitol, I was lied to all day, every day. Hard to say that in a sort of formal podcast, but it's true. Let's see. So I'm going to try and answer a couple of rapid fire questions. What other political news programs do you listen to? Who else is telling the true story about Washington and the US? Well, there's a lot of great work out there. In podcasting, there really aren't very many people who are trying to do news at all. There are a lot of people talking about politics. There's Slate's Political Gabfest. There's the New Yorker Political Scene. But none of them are actually, they're just sort of chewing over what's going on in politics. They're not trying to dig deep the way that we are. When This American Life does politics and news, it does it extraordinarily well. They're fantastic people, and I recommend going back and looking through their podcasts if you're specifically interested in Washington. In fact, I did an episode for them with Alex Bloomberg of Planet Money called Take the Money and Run for Office. it would be great if you go back and listen to that. And I'll try and come up with a list. There also, somebody says that they, Adam Curry, who has a long form podcast that deconstructs media coverage, the No Agenda show. They found out about DecodeDC from him. That sounds great. And while I have like 2 minutes left, we would love it if you guys would, retweet us, post our stories on Facebook. If you're not following us on Facebook or Twitter, it's really easy. We're facebook.com/DecodeDC. On Twitter, it's @DecodeDC. I personally am Radio Babe on Twitter, and you can find me there. The more people that we get listening to this, the more we can tell them the real story that is going on, that is happening in Washington. And I think we all benefit from knowing that. Please send us your thoughts, your comments about this Hangout. This is the first time we've done it. And obviously we had some tech glitches, but we're going to plan to do more of these. And you can always send me an email at andrea@decodedc.com. You guys want to say goodbye? Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. I was actually going to walk you around the office and introduce you to some of the staff, but very quickly. Oh God, this is probably about to freeze. We are doing 5 episodes about House of Cards, which the series season 3 drops on Netflix in about a week, and it's going to be brilliant. The 5 podcasts are amazing. It's called Inside House of Cards. The first one goes up today, and then they will air Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week with writers and politicians, and it's just really fun. So let us know what you think of that. Listen up, and thank you so much for joining us for this first ever DecodeDC Hangout. Thanks, everyone.